has reportedly begun seeking wartime executive powers in order to secure a better deal with an economic war triggered against the Trump administration. The move comes as senior administration officials are expected to begin providing members of Congress briefings on the Iran situation. So yesterday, the country reportedly increased its production of low-enriched uranium fourfold.
And Iran's foreign minister is also warning President Trump not to threaten his country, calling Trump's Sunday Twitter comments, which promised the end of Iran if fighting occurred, a, quote, genocidal taunt, saying in part, Iranians have stood tall for millennia. Try respect. It works. Joining us to discuss the tensions between the U.S. and Iran is Republican Congressman Dr. Mark Green of Tennessee. He serves on the House Committee on Homeland Security and is an Army veteran who deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also a member of the House Oversight and Reform Committee. Sir, thank you, and thank you for your service as well before we get started here.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Glad to be on the show with you guys today.
So tell us what you know about the reported Iranian threats to American interests, and update us, if you will, about what briefings you're expecting to receive.
Sure. One of the things I can't do, obviously, is, share any classified information.
Sure.
So I have to be a little bit careful. And that can also mean, just confirming open source information. So I have to be really careful about that. But what I will say is the administration has said they have credible evidence. And what that typically means when they say credible evidence is that there are confirmation from multiple sources and different types of sources. So you might have a human asset that gives you a piece of information, and then you get a couple of cell phone hits, and maybe there's some satellite imagery that shows repositioning of forces. Not saying that's what's happening here. What I'm doing is defining what credible evidence is, and the administration has said they have credible evidence for an attack. And so, that's about the best I can say to keep from giving up any information that's been shared. But we also have some briefings today, as you've reported. Secretary of State Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Shanahan are coming over to talk to us today.
So, Congressman, there's been some speculation that John Bolton or Secretary Pompeo have been itching for war, and the president has been fighting within his own cabinet. Are you confident in the information that the administration is giving you on this grounds? And since you reviewed some of it yourself, I know you can't get into it, but are you confident in the information that is being presented to you on the reported Iranian threats?
I'm Mike Pompeo's West Point classmate. I've known Mike Pompeo for a very long time. He is an American patriot, and the last thing he wants as a former Army officer is for us to go to war. It is always a last resort, and I'm confident that that's how Mike Pompeo feels. When they say this is something that we have to be concerned about, I trust Secretary Pompeo. I do. He's a great guy.
When you see the president, though, taking to Twitter to basically threaten Iran, is that something that concerns you, or do you think that he's taking the right approach? Do you think we should leave those military options on the table and be threatening them at this point?
Every leader speaks sort of from their own language and their own tone. I might say it differently. This is President Trump's way of saying it. And, President Trump is being President Trump. I think the most important thing now for him is to just be consistent and be consistently himself. And I think the world will filter that. I think he's just being Trump.
Are we safer now, though, than when Iran and the U.S. were in the Iranian nuclear deal, and Iran was complying with the tenets of that deal? As you know, they just stopped complying with a few components, even though they had stayed in after the U.S. withdrew. I mean, do you see any possibility that we're going to get a better deal, and are you worried that we may end up in an armed conflict with Iran?
So the first question is, do I think we're any safer than we were before when we were in the deal? And the answer to that question is no, I don't think we're any safer or any less safe. I think it's about where we were, only now we're informed and we're treating Iran as they really are. I mean, Iran has, since the formation of the theocracy, been basically an enemy to America. Our U.S. courts found them guilty of killing U.S. servicemen at the Khobar Towers. I know for a fact we lost men and women in Iraq from the improved explosive devices from Iran. Their constitution even says that the country exists for the purpose of forcing Islam on the rest of the world. I mean, they are a theocracy. They are our enemy. And at least we have now a president who is taking all of that history and operating appropriately, whereas our former administration gave them $400 million on the back ramp of an aircraft in the country and then released $100 billion in assets that gave them access to $100 billion in assets that was then used to prop up Hezbollah. I mean, they're 70% of Hezbollah's budget. I mean, this is not, they are not our friends. So I don't know that we're any more or less safe. We're just...
Sure. Are you equally concerned, though, about Saudi Arabia and the way that they have spread extremist Islam and funded terror in the past?
I am absolutely concerned with the Wahhabi version of Islam getting exported. And I think there have been significant changes there in Saudi Arabia. You look, women can drive now. There is a massive shift going on with the new leadership there in Saudi Arabia. And interestingly enough, in the Middle East, we're seeing this, the emergence of what I would call a bipolar Middle East. It's the Iran axis and the Saudi Arabian axis. And so, obviously Iran is our enemy. They have, in the Houthi rebels in Yemen, they launched ship-sinking missiles, anti-ship missiles against U.S. ships.
Right.
I mean, they are our enemy. And they also launched rockets into Riyadh. I mean, they're Saudi Arabia's enemy. And now they're disrupting shipping with drone attacks on pipelines in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's clear who our enemy is.
Should we seek regime change then if they're our enemy?
That I am not. I think we should respond to attacks. That would be my perspective.
Right. Congressman, we also want to turn to some of the news of the day here in Washington, as important as this is. One of your colleagues, Justin Amash, has been calling for impeachment proceedings against President Trump. Do you agree with his assessment? How is that? How is the feeling within the GOP caucus?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. How do you and many of your colleagues feel towards Justin Amash?
I think everyone is very, very frustrated with him now. I mean, I sat on the floor of the House yesterday, and the conversation is, what is he thinking? One, there isn't any evidence that supports any kind of an impeachable offense. And where he's coming up with this, no one knows. If you look at all of the articles that interviews that he's given, he hasn't cited a single piece of credible evidence, but he keeps talking about credible evidence. You would think that he'd give at least one example, but this is most of us, we think this is just some kind of a press stunt.
But Congressman, do you think it's healthy for the Republican Party to have dissent and different voices inside of it?
Absolutely, but I believe in the Reagan 11th commandment. Out in public, you don't talk bad about another Republican. If I have an issue with the president, I'll pick up the phone and call the president and say, hey, sir, I need 5 minutes. I'm not going to get on TV and give the Democrats a talking point.
Do you think that Justin Amash is ultimately helping his Democratic colleagues in the push for impeachment against the president?
He clearly is creating more media on this and basically emphasizing stuff that isn't even there. And it's very clear that the Democrat agenda is investigate the president. I mean, there's this memorandum that's out there signed by the committee chairman where they all agree to basically make their efforts concerted and synchronized attacking the White House. Now, we've got all these issues in the United States going on. I'm on oversight. We've got maintenance issues in our ships. We've got increases in active duty suicides. There are issues at the border. It's clearly a crisis. Now even the New York Times is saying it's a crisis. We can't address that stuff, but we'll just investigate the president. So yes, I do think that his comments add fuel to that fire, and it is a waste of taxpayer money and the effort of and time of these committees.